The NBA draft lotteries tonight. Jazz, Wizards, and Hornets all have the best chance to secure the #1 overall pick. This is the 7th year of the new lottery system. Teams that finished with the worst record in the association has not won the lottery since the odds at the top were leveled under this new system. So tonight's event got our producers thinking about some notable ping pong ball outcomes. And who could forget 40 years ago, 1985, the worst record with the Pacers, team that won it, the Knicks. Patrick Ewing was available, of course, and talks of a frozen envelope out of a drum from the late David Stern. It went the Knicks' way in landing the Georgetown superstar. How about 2008? Worst record that season, the Heat, but the Bulls with the 9th worst record ended up with hometown local guy Derrick Rose. A few years later, in 2011, the Timberwolves had the worst record, but the team that won the lottery, the Cavs via the Clippers, 8th worst record. Remember, it was an offseason in which LeBron James left for Miami. So Kyrie Irving, by the way, that year Cleveland had the 1st and 4th picks after losing LeBron. They'd also have the 1st pick a couple years later. Anthony Bennett didn't turn out so well, but sandwiched in between that is 2012. Bobcats with the worst record, but the Hornets with the 4th worst. As, of course, Anthony Davis, the AD era under Saints owner Tom Benson, who bought the team and then moved them to New Orleans. Could 2025 be part of that? Who knows? Adam Finkelstein joining us here, our draft analyst. First and foremost, before we get to anything, Adam, do you subscribe to one or all of those alleged rigged lotteries?
Let me just say this. If San Antonio wins tonight, you're going to have a lot of conspiracy theorists coming out of the woodwork. It is what when Derrick Rose ends up in Chicago and LeBron James ends up in Cleveland and Wemby ends up in San Antonio. But I guess it makes the cinema all that much more entertaining.
So we're going to pick 3 teams, and since you mentioned the Spurs, let's get to them, right? 6% chance to get the 1st overall pick. I mean, just take me through all of the dreams that some people have there, not including the 1st overall pick, what might happen with Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, what would happen if San Antonio got the #1 pick?
Well, you're talking about Wemby and Cooper Flagg for the next 15 years, assuming that everybody gets and stays healthy. And that would be probably the best dynamic duo, certainly among young players in the NBA, and set the Spurs up to return to their previous place among the very best of the NBA and have a chance to win multiple NBA championships. I mean, if you were to ever pair Wemby and Cooper Flagg, that is the type of outcome that not only becomes a dream, but becomes very possible. And Cooper Flagg is one of the very best players we've seen certainly grow up on American soil in the last few years. Wemby is a true generational talent. If they were ever to combine forces, as I said, it would bring the conspiracy theorists out in full force, because the Spurs are widely perceived to be one of the NBA's favorite franchises. When they got that 1st pick, they gave them Wemby. It more than raised a few eyebrows. If lightning were to strike twice, I think it would. You'd get quite a few people wondering out loud about the validity of the process.
That would be one heck of a start for Mitch Johnson, of course, who was in the interim role. Now he's the full-time head coach, with Greg Popovich moving on as an executive. Let's stay in the state of Texas. Let's go to Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks. Do they sacrifice Luka Doncic to get Cooper Flagg?
Well, if they did, they just trade him to the Lakers for like a future round pick or something, right? So. Listen, this would certainly be a game changer for Nico Harrison and that organization, because it would allow them to quickly change the narrative. They've got a couple of solid young pieces. I mean, Derek Lively in particular, but this is now a team that's been constructed to win now, with Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving both in their 30s and really in the last few years of their prime. So what Cooper Flagg would do, he would give them a bridge, someone who could help contribute to winning right now, but give them a bridge to the future and an opportunity to grow into a focal point in time, be a supportive guy right away, and then be the face of the franchise down the road. And this is a player, one of the things that makes Cooper so special is he's equally comfortable now playing both of those roles. He doesn't need to be your offensive focal point to impact winning, but he showed this year at Duke he's more than capable of playing that role. And believe it or not, that's something that we actually had some questions about in high school at Montverde, because he's so unselfish and almost plays like a point forward at times. So Dallas would offer him the best of both worlds and certainly come in an ideal time for that franchise.
Adam, what about Philly, 10.5% chance?
So here's the thing. If they get number 1, could you see them saying, hey, Milwaukee, what about Giannis for Cooper? I think Philly is the team that if they number 1 pick might be most inclined to listen if Milwaukee were to come calling. Now, that would be a big decision. Obviously, Daryl Morey is not afraid to swing for the fences. That's what he thought he was doing this year. He's got Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey. He got last year's draft right as well with Jared McCain, but the injury bug bit them hard this year. You put Cooper Flagg on that team, and if everybody's healthy, they are every bit a favorite in the Eastern Conference. But with Giannis, they are probably the favorite. Now, Giannis is 31 years old. Are you mortgaging the future for the here and now? Who knows? Who actually makes that call? If you're a GM, if you're Daryl Morey, do you feel some pressure to win now with someone like Giannis? That would be really, really fascinating. I think the 76ers are the team that could be most tempted for that Giannis swap if they get the first pick tonight.
That would be interesting. And by the way, before I let you go, Adam, here, all the talk about Cooper Flagg and deservedly so, but what's the most interesting thing that you have your eye on ahead of the draft tonight?
I'm really interested to see who gets number 2. I think it would be a great fit for Dylan Harper in Washington. You know, Washington had the 2nd pick last year, and they played it really nicely. They built a young core. They weren't really worried about fighting for the playoffs this year. They were letting the young guys get minutes, but the hole in their lineup is at the point guard position. Dylan Harper widely presumed to be the 2nd pick in this draft and the top point guard prospect. He'd be a perfect fit in Washington, so we'll see who gets number 2 tonight. Of course, Charlotte has a habit of coming in number 2 at these big drafts as well, so they would be an interesting landing spot too.
Adam, certainly appreciate it. We'll look forward to your coverage tonight on CBS Sports HQ from our Stamford, Connecticut studios. There it is. Preview on primetime pregame 1 hour before that 7 p.m. Eastern time slot. Live reaction to the lottery results and a full mock draft after the lottery with all 14 picks. It's all coming up right here on HQ.